Hey, and welcome to another episode of Lorekeeper, the series where we dive into various parts of the Ether and Dark Ether histories. In this episode, we'll be talking about The Rock. The prison, not the wrestler. The year is 1922, and a person by the name of Salvatore Sal De Luca opened up an illegal gambling house, officially starting his own crime family. Aside from the gambling, Sal's family also heavily consisted of prostitution and distribution of alcohol. He'd later steal the girl of a fellow gangster by the name of Giuseppe Rioni, eventually also taking him out with a shot to the head, pinning the blame on yet another gangster named Jimmy Alessi. The gang seeked vengeance, starting a war between the rival gang and Sal's family. Needing more assistance in order to take care of this new problem that has presented itself, Sal brings in Billy Handsome, a member of the family who looked up to gangsters like Sal, even being viewed as the son Sal never had. Billy would unleash wrath and terror upon Torrio's gang, as well as any innocent civilians who were nearby at the time. Sal's gang only continued to grow in wealth and power, corrupting the police department and mayor. Despite this positive growth for the family, bribery is beginning to not work as often as it used to, forcing Sal to rethink his strategy before he loses control. Which he lost anyway. His empire collapsed more and more. Losing his patience towards the situation, Sal took his rage out on a prostitute. The Chicago police, finally stepping in after ignoring Sal's crimes for as long as they have, arrest Sal. Meanwhile, 3 other members of the family are also arrested. The aforementioned Billy Handsome, who managed to get away with 116 counts of murder, Albert Weasel Arlington, who failed in an LA heist, spending his time in the hospital trying to get a comic strip called Icarus published, but with no success. And finally, Michael Finn O'Leary, who was arrested for 16 counts of gambling fraud, which was exposed by his soon-to-be ex-wife, who was trying to escape her marriage. The 4 mobsters were sent to Alcatraz Penitentiary in 1932. With the 4 of them now as prisoners in Alcatraz, the Weasel comes up with a plan to escape the island via a plane of his own design, which he calls Icarus. Weasel proposes the idea to Sal, Billy, and Finn, who all decide to go through with it. Months pass since the proposal and zero progress has been made towards the plane. Realizing the stupidity of the plan and that they've been duped, Sal, Finn, and Billy lure Weasel up to the roof of the prison, stabbing him excessively. They leave him there on that rainy night as he bleeds out alone. Weasel's body is eventually discovered by the guards of the prison, which is brought to the warden's attention. The Apothecon overlord, the Shadow Man, contacts the warden, requesting him to transform the island into a purgatory for the 4 prisoners to endure. Binding their souls to his, along with all the sins they've each committed, creates a pocket dimension variant of the prison, designed to entrap them in a perpetual cycle. As punishment for the murder of Weasel, the 3 mobsters are sentenced to electric chair. The warden also secretly kills himself the same way, bringing himself and the 4 mobsters to the promised purgatory. The 4 mobsters awaken in the prison once again, unaware of their situation. They proceed with the escape plan as intended, luring in prison guard Stanley Ferguson into Weasel's cell, where he is killed. Weasel takes the keys, freeing the others. Billy proceeds to give everyone else revolvers he stole from the warden's private collection. However, Stanley Ferguson reawakens, entering the view of the 4 prisoners. Initially thinking Weasel did a botched job, Billy shoots at Stanley, who is unfazed by the attack. The 4 then open fire on him until he finally drops. They realize something's off as the prison shows its true form. The 4 of them are overwhelmed by the undead, betraying one another for their own survival, each succumbing to the hordes. After their demise, they awaken back in the prison once more, with no memory of their deaths, repeating the cycle again and again. As they make more progress through each attempt, the warden and the undead assist Weasel on the Golden Gate Bridge, as the warden was given new orders to acquire Richtofen's blood. Needing to break the cycle, he needs Weasel to emerge victorious. Sal, Finn, and Billy presume that Weasel has betrayed them, causing a bloody battle between the 4. In the cycle timeline, the 3 kill Weasel during the shootout on the bridge, returning them to where they started all over again. However, in the broken cycle timeline, Weasel survives, becoming a free spirit within the prison while the others become further trapped within it. Outside of Purgatory, Dr. Edward Richtofen from 1918 arrives in Alcatraz in 1940, using his connections with the Illuminati to convince the prison to allow the construction of a facility beneath the rock. Richtofen's proposal is greenlit, and the construction of the facility begins immediately. It's at this point where Richtofen develops a small portable teleporter device and has created 5 cryochamber pods, one of those cryochambers withholding a past version of Richtofen from the Great War. Richtofen eventually departs from the prison. It also turns out that Stanley Ferguson is alive and well, retiring in 1942. He'd be visited by a reporter who was sent by the Shadow Man. The reporter would interview Stanley about Finn, Weasel, Billy, and Sal's past and their apparent escape attempt while at Alcatraz. Now, things are about to get messy and confusing, so I hope I could explain all this in a way that makes sense. Back with Richtofen, he returns to the prison, where he finally meets with Victus, who he recently sent out on a quest to obtain a mysterious book known as the Korborium. Reading the Korborium, he learns of his pasts and futures, his fate in every universe, and the existential dread that comes with boundless knowledge. Realizing what he must do to secure a better tomorrow, and himself, he offers Victus an ultimatum. Come with him on his quest, or enter the cryopods until everything is set right. He then departs to perform some tasks, allowing them to think on it. It's during this departure where he obtains the blood vials of the two prisoners, meets with his undead self who gives him the blood vials of Victus, visiting himself in 1914 to give him the blood vials of Sal and Finn, and then finally returning to 1941's Alcatraz, where he asks Victus what their decision was. They tell him they wish to rest in cryostasis, tired of the endless fighting and struggle for survival. Granting them their desire, they are placed on ice until then. Immediately after, a Primus from the future arrives to secure the blood vials of Victus. At least, that's how it went in the cycle timeline. In the broken cycle timeline, when Primus arrives, Richtofen informs his future self that the Korborium's pages have changed, now demanding his own sacrifice. He opens a rift to exit through, while his future self breaks down, asking how he could let this happen. With a shrug and a smile, Richtofen leaves them. Now trapped in the Purgatory realm themselves, and with a desire for Richtofen's blood on the line, Richtofen continues to break down, unable to think properly or focus. The rest of Primus, enraged at how quickly his plan has fallen apart, along with the seemingly pointless sacrifices they've all endured for their souls, brings the already fragile alliance to an even worse state. The Warden and his undead army unleash themselves upon the four, while Richtofen tries to deny his fate. The others try to keep him level-headed and to come up with a plan of their own. Nikolai tries to suggest to the crew that they betray Richtofen and give him to the Warden. Dempsey and Takio, despite being equally as upset as Nikolai, shame him for having his mind cross that thought. Through their entrapment, Primus assists lost souls of the prison to be freed from its clutches, which assists Richtofen in coming to terms with his own fate. It's at the end of their journey in the prison that Richtofen finally gives in, even gaining assistance from the spirits of Weasel, Billy, Finn, and Sal, holding off the Warden to give Primus time to get the advantage. It's here where Richtofen enters the dark mechanism, so that his friends may escape. Upon entering the machine, the fifth cryopod opens, with the Richtofen from the Great War emerging from within. He quickly runs to assist the rest of Primus in their battle against the Warden, banishing him and the undead from the realm. Spirits now free, the mobsters included, the Purgatory is no more. 4 rifts open, allowing for Primus to finally leave. Not eager to secure his own soul, Nikolai dreads the journey ahead. However, the Richtofen from the Great War reassures Nikolai that the collection of his soul is no longer needed. Promoting Nikolai to the role of leader, even granting him the Korborium, this Richtofen quickly goes to visit his other self who is still remaining in the dark mechanism, while Nikolai glances upon the Korborium's pages. The dying Richtofen calls out for help from his other self, who only shuts it down, removing the blood vials and summoning key from his body. He begins to walk away, destroying the blood vials, while the Richtofen attached to the machine begs for them to help him, the one who did all the hard work. His cries go ignored as Primus leaves through the rifts, abandoning their Richtofen, who loses his last drop of blood, alone. And that is all there is to know about what's gone on in Alcatraz in the zombie storyline. I really, really hope that all made sense. I had to cut out so much as to not make it any more overwhelming than it already can be, so I do apologize if this one was a bit messy. But thank you, as always, for watching my videos. I really appreciate the support you guys have been giving, and I hope that you guys have a great day or night. Goodbye.